I just asked everybody in every department to think about what they do every day and then try and find what AI solution there is that can make that better. The easy ones are like GPT is, you know, just ridiculous for content writing. You know what I mean? Um, I know that my piece for Fran Dev, which I oversee, is the Samantha piece. So that's, pretty easy too. But I just found some tools last night, AI tools for Excel that I sent to the finance team. So we're kind of like from the corporate level, we're learning what's out there, and then we're trying to filter that down to what's the best slash most economically feasible to use. And then we're in the learning process right now. So we are trying to, I haven't even honestly got to the franchisees yet with this. It's more of like, let's figure out our tools, how to use them best for each department and to become a more efficient just organization across the board. And then once we've, I think, nailed down all the things that we're going to be using, we'll get into like an education process with the franchisees on.
Welcome to the Art of Franchise Marketing. Each episode takes a deep dive into the franchise space and explores how the biggest and best brands handle national branding, franchise development, employee recruitment, and localized marketing on a daily basis. This podcast is brought to you by Nedsertive, a localized digital marketing partner for franchise networks. Nedsertive's Madeleine Park talked shop with franchise executives to discuss what's working, what's not, and answers the question, what else can you be doing to excel at the art of franchise marketing?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art of Franchise Marketing. I'm your host, Madeleine Zook, and today we've got Benjamin from Woops Macaroons here to just drop some knowledge on, surprisingly, more than just macaroons. So Ben, thanks for coming on. Go ahead and give our listeners kind of a intro about who you are, who your brand is, and how we got here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'll just give a quick, I won't go all the way back, but I'll give a quick summary of my franchise experience. I started in the industry, cut my teeth about 16 years ago, selling leads in the franchise portal space. So I had an opportunity to work with like tons of large brands, startup brands. I got to go to like a lot of the franchise conferences on the company dime and network and meet a lot of people and just learn a lot about franchise development. And as I kind of got further along in my career, I just really started to tap into like my entrepreneurial side. And franchising is obviously just the whole industry is full of entrepreneurship, and so it was a place for me that I felt very comfortable and wanted to stay. I stepped out of my sales role. It's been about a decade ago now, and started a small franchise consulting group, Woodruff Franchise Consulting Group, and started assisting some of the brands with some of the knowledge I'd picked up along the way with, building franchise websites, franchise marketing, tech and franchise space, lead gen, sales process, all the stuff that you know well. And Woops, Macarons and Gips was actually my first client, which was interesting. And we grew the brand very quickly. Just kind of took off. I had amazing synergy with the founding partners, and was a multi-unit franchisee of the brand. At one point, exited that, invested capital in the franchisor side of the brand. Was heading up franchise development and franchise operations for the brand for several years, and I've been in the co-CEO position here over the last 3 years. Kind of transitioned into that to help lead the brand through the COVID mess a few years ago, which I don't really want to go back through again. But in all things franchising, still do a little bit of consulting work, and invest in franchise brands as well as an investor, and also I'm like heavily involved in technology and franchising, as we were talking about before we hopped on here. Have a Woops, and I kind of have an executive partnership with Franchisely, which is a very quickly growing tech company in the space, which you'll start to hear a lot more about. We're building some very cool AI stuff for lead screening and scheduling, and communication between franchisor and franchisee, and CRM and royalty management, and just very cool, light, user-friendly software to help manage your franchise system. So, and we're ultimately here at Woops, like the vision is very clear. It's going to be a path to continuing to raise capital and acquire other brands and try and keep, using the best in class technology to grow a platform over time. And that's sort of the direction we're headed.
That's that's awesome. So it's funny because a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I got into franchising accidentally." And I'm sure, your previous life wasn't the goal wasn't, "Oh, I'm going to sell franchise leads through portals." But I like that it was intentional, kind of the path there. So, in talking about Whoops, talk to me about why they're doing well. What is your brand promise? How many locations do you have? Because I'm sure a lot of people are sitting here thinking, oh, that's a great, fun, trendy, everyone loves to eat that, but can they really
Yeah,
make money?
yeah. No, it's a great question. There's a couple things. So we grew to from 16 to 19 to 52 locations just really rapidly. Like we had our sights on 100, in the next couple years, which, the percentage wise, doesn't happen very often from inception of concept to franchise to 100, is a very difficult path, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then, we hit the COVID monster in 2020. We're heavily retail based. We have a very cool kind of cart slash kiosk unit that goes in high traffic areas. So, potentially airports, bus terminals. We have one in the subway station here in New York City. And then, we are going into a lot of malls because we were in what's called the cart space. So we're getting into mall properties for 2,000, 2,500 a month in rent. So ultra low cost structure to be in these, A and B malls, which are still very good
Mhm.
with constant traffic, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, the holidays. So that's a great business for us and it makes a ton of sense. We are really, you think macaroon, is it trendy? Is it not trendy? Um, what I can tell you is over the past 10 years, the Google searches for the word continue to grow and the graph goes up. And in addition to our sales to um, continue to grow, and a great barometer for us is we do the Bryant Park Holiday Market here in New York City each year.
Mhm.
Last year was our 10th season from the original founding season in 2012, and we had our best sales year yet. Um, but in all that being said, we are a gifting company. We work, very closely in the same space as Nothing But Bundt Cake, an edible arrangement. So for us, there's, a retail component. Our franchisees have really cool mobile pop-up carts where they can go do holiday markets, street fairs, events, farmers markets. So there's an ancillary revenue channel there
Mhm.
that our franchisees can continue to grow on top of the retail. And then we also, and I'm sitting in our distribution center here in Brooklyn on Greenpoint, we also do nationwide shipping on behalf of our franchisees. So, for example, we do a ton of corporate gifting, especially in Q4. If your organization needs to send out 100 customized gift boxes for their employees or their clients or their customers, our franchisees, regardless of where they're at in the country, can send us an order form, collect payment for it, and we ship it out on their behalf. And that, along with some online sales as well, which we push at the local level, we've got a nice kind of wide net of revenue channels that we've created for them.
And did you always start with that shipping option, or was originally it just like kind of the brick and mortar buy on the spot concept?
We had e-com site early on,
Mhm.
and then just truthfully, when we got to COVID, we stopped franchising. We gave franchisees the opportunity to leave their agreement, not knowing if we would make it through,
Okay.
and also knowing we were going to do a bunch of other stuff to try and generate revenue. So we bolstered up our e-com platform through COVID, and we were doing a lot to just try and generate sales to keep
Mhm.
our head above water. And then as soon as we got to the other side, we shifted everything basically that comes in on the e-com platform, whether it's a local pickup delivery, whether it's a corporate gifting lead, which would go into a CRM, which would go directly to a franchisee, all of that gets pushed back down to the local level.
Very cool. Yeah, as much as I think COVID, and I don't want to say that anything really good came out of it. It was nice to see the innovation and the rapid innovation that people were able to do in terms of the delivery, the e-commerce, the
Yeah,
curbside pickup. So, you guys are definitely on board with that. And then in terms of the product, and I'm saying this just so you can explain it, so don't take offense. But there are like macaroons that you can buy at TJ Maxx. There's ones that you can
yeah,
buy at bakeries, and what makes it different? Because typically people are like, oh, you can only get the authentic thing in Europe, but
yeah,
clearly yours are hitting. They're hitting well. So what makes them
yeah.
different?
It's really the ingredients, all through and through. We use the highest quality premium green ingredients in all the macaroons. There are our proprietary recipes, and there is an enormous difference between what we produce and what you would pick up, in a grocery store, or a Trader Joe's, or whatever it may be. It really just comes down to the ingredients, and then also the manufacturing process. And it's funny you say, because we've been all, of course, been all over Europe trying macaroons and just about everywhere. But it's funny, we always take ours and we'll go out and do like the Pepsi challenge, with people for overseas or whatever. We just consistently get back that we have some of the best in the world. I think probably the next closest, or that's on par with us, would be like Lotte Ray.
Mhm.
But we're definitely right there at the very top as far as quality of the product, for sure.
And I think that there's something to be said for that, because I was actually talking to Justin, who's the CEO of Honeygrow, and he doesn't franchise, potentially could in the future, but the biggest fear was losing that quality of product.
Yep.
And I think that you guys are a good example of the fact that you can franchise, you can have that mass production and still keep the quality, as long as there is that focus on that. It's just not assumed, oh, we're really good, and leaving it at that. It sounds like you guys are constantly making sure that you are innovating, keeping the flavors right, keeping whatever the consistency right. I can't even cook water, bake anything. The best thing I can make is a reservation. So forgive
Yeah.
me if any of these words are not used correctly. So my next question then is, how many of these suckers do you think you've made all time?
Hmm.
You got to have like an approximate number.
I don't know, millions. I would have to like work the math backwards.
That's
I
awesome.
really don't know, but millions
And
I'll do
even to be
for
able
sure.
to say millions is great. Millions of macarons. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, kind of what I started out with is that, like, you have this great product, people love the brand, but you have a heavy focus on the tech part of it. And I think that's a lot of what is understated in franchising is people just assume, oh, you've got a great brand, you've got a product, and it's just going to sell. But tech is what is driving the industry, and really is what makes or breaks satisfaction, what makes or break growth, especially over that, like, once people say, oh, I just can't break that 10 unit mark, that 20 unit mark. Well, usually it's scalability, and usually it comes down to the tech. So obviously you have a personal interest in that, but how has that really played into that day-to-day operations, and also how you're leading the charge with, Franchisely and the brand? How does that wrap itself into all of those projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the one of the best thing tech has done for us, like in these very crucial positions, whether it's a lead screener or a customer service, you've got to find this human element of just like a natural sense of urgency, right? Like
Mhm.
I have that, a lot of people have that, but a lot of people don't. And if you don't have that, like you're behind the eight ball. And the technology completely removes that need for someone to have it, because
Right.
the Samantha just does what she does. She immediately responds. She immediately gets you an answer. And we live in like obviously a very we've spent so much time with these phones and all this technology through our lives. Like people expect immediate responses, immediate results, all of those things. And just like really the very beginning of ultimately becoming a Whoops franchisee begins with a conversation with Samantha. As soon as you submit your information, what are you looking for? How can we help you? Do you have this, financial requirement? When are you available to have a quick introduction call? So the very first touch point is technology in our process. And then, you know, as the candidate evolves through the process, there's technology automations when they go through this step and that step, and I just kind of continue to get them the information quickly and timely, and getting them through the sales process, and then on to the other side, you've got great tech for onboarding. So you've got franchisee has a mobile app and they can be in the field and they've got to go snap a picture of this permit and upload it before they can get to the next onboarding task. Technology solves, kind of the mobility and keeping the process moving. You get into franchisor franchisee communication. Samantha's starting to solve, the remove the Zendesk and the ticketing system, like we talked about just a little bit ago. She's answering the questions and challenges we've had is, we're on top of Zendesk and we respond to things very quickly, and there's a daily review on tickets to make sure they're all being answered. But the reality is they may just need to know where a permit is, or I can't remember where the order the part for the water pump for the kiosk, or I need my operations manual, and it's something they need like very quickly, and they may not get an answer for an hour or 2 hours. So it just decreases that time and increases the service and the relationship between the brand and the franchisees in the field.
Now, is this a software that you guys are building, or have you bought it, or are you doing a little bit of both?
Building it from scratch, and we're about, I would say, 50% of the way through it. We're going to add in some more cool stuff. Most likely, we're looking at next is integrating an LMS, learning management system, in. So you would go right into the onboarding through the nice app, right into the learning management system. And we're looking at some partnerships and different things with some very cool fintech companies that are going to help with, P&L collection, franchisor, bookkeeping, and just kind of, financial management, from the franchisee to the franchisor level. That'll be another big component as well. And probably several more modules, but a lot of it, the whole platform is based around really two things. It's either creating cost savings in an area,
Sure.
or creating cost savings and, increasing revenue potentially. So that's just kind of the way, kind of working backwards to look at the modules that will be rolled out next.
Yeah, and I think that for, our listeners listening in, I think a lot of the challenge is that most times people want to build it, but they can't afford it. So I think that the pioneers of the building process, such as you've done this, MadePro did this, 20 years ago, is that you don't have to build it to be successful. But if you can build it, and when you decide to build it, the franchise becomes so much more than just a turnkey solution. I think it suddenly opens up this world of greater possibilities for your franchise, because a lot of the times when you're buying a software, and we have franchises that have proprietary and bought and then a combination of both, is that a
Mhm.
lot of the times it's here's your box, here's your plan, here's your tier, here's your support system. If you want something different, it goes on a roadmap or a wish list. Do you see it? Do
Yeah,
you not? But one
yeah,
of the great things about having your franchisor own that is, one, they're living it typically with you every day. So when you see a problem, they've probably seen it or seen it at a 50 times, greater scale. And that they can fix that. There's no, necessarily, and oh, that's going to charge you an extra $10,000, or oh, you
yeah,
want this, or we got to get buy-in from those. So I think that there is
yeah,
outside of the obvious, building your own technology, I think there's a huge benefit on the franchise dev side as well, because the selling point is, we're going to fix it if it's broken. And typically, we're going to be able to add features that are unique to the brand that you aren't going to get anywhere else. And I think that that's a big bonus, and probably where, the franchise as the franchises are moving to these, P&E or, umbrella brands,
Yeah.
ideally they're all going to have their own proprietary software.
Yep.
And then you talk about, what's her name? Samantha?
Yeah, she's the lovely AI lady that does all the great communication.
Listen, if I end up doing an interview with Samantha one day, just put me in my grave. Put me in
I
my grave.
don't think you're that far away, to be honest with you.
I always say, like, if iRobot's coming down the pike, I got to be with Will Smith because I won't make it. I'm for sure not smarter than a robot. But how much do you guys coach on this AI? So I understand that you're implementing it into the software, and that's definitely where, the future of tech is going. But in terms of like how you're coaching your franchisees through that, because I'm sure that there's some that are like, whoa, 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 I'm paying for my support system, not Samantha.
Yeah.
How do you kind of speak to that?
Well, we're still learning, to be honest with you, and still trying
Mhm.
to figure things out. It's obviously very early with this stuff, just, relatively recently launching. Just from like the corporate level, kind of what we've done is, and this is like really live right now, is like, I think it's about a week or so ago. I just asked everybody in every department to think about what they do every day and then try and find what AI solution there is that can make that better. So, the easy ones are like GPT is,
Sure.
just ridiculous for content writing. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Um, I know that my piece for Fran Dev, which I oversee, is the Samantha piece. So that's, pretty easy too. But I just found some tools last night, AI tools for Excel that I sent to the finance team. So we're kind of like from the corporate level, we're learning what's out there, and then we're trying to filter that down to what's the best slash most economically feasible to use.
Mhm.
And then we're in the learning process right now. So we are trying to, I haven't even honestly got to the franchisees yet with this. It's more of like, let's figure out our tools, how to use them best for each department and to become a more efficient just organization across the board. And then once we've, I think, nailed down all the things that we're going to be using, we'll get into like an education process with the franchisees. We're just not quite there yet.
And I think that's a great just baseline for anything kind of innovative. I've coached a couple franchisees on, I'm getting, an influx of, I want to use threads. How do we use threads? XYZ. And a lot of times franchisors, especially newer ones, are afraid to say no or afraid to shut it down. They think if they say no, it means forever, they're going to get pushback. But the reality is before you roll out anything system wide, or even, say we're going to, peek under, the door or whatever, you need to understand it fully yourself and on your operational level, just as you would your concept, just as you would a new product, because the power of technology, the power of releasing something like that at scale can be detrimental to your brand unless you're doing your due diligence first and finding out the avenues in which it can benefit and the avenues in which you need to stay away from. I think Chat GPT was, so fun for everyone. And then all of a sudden franchisors are going, hold on, what about these privacy guidelines? We're
Yeah.
having, issues here, issues there. People are uploading their FDDs, asking them to read it. And then, you're getting numbers released that they wouldn't necessarily want public.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to note that it can be, while franchising can be a slower process because there are a lot more cooks in the kitchen, it doesn't necessarily mean that that delay is bad. I think a lot of people want to
Yeah.
be on top of all of these things. We had that thing with Snapchat and Made Pro, and I was like, stop telling them Snapchat's okay to use, because now we got maids, or we called them pros, going into people's houses and snapping pictures. I was like, lawsuit, 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 lawsuit. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely want to keep legal out of it. Um,
Yep.
well, what's so aside from this tech that you're developing, what's next for you? What's next for the brand? What are your goals moving forward? I know you have your hands, kind of in a ton of franchise pots, if you will. So,
Yep.
tell me what's around the bed.
Really, just the number one goal right now for us is to continue to raise capital and find the
Mhm.
right capital partners. My vision for the brand is so, franchising and food just in general. There's a lot of interest in food, but food's complicated, especially when you get into like a full service restaurant or whatever it may be. But we have some of the best macaroons in the world, but it's very simple. There's no food prep, no cooking. They're shipped direct to the stores. So we're going to continue to raise capital. Sort of the vision is to look at other very simple food brands that can deliver high AUVs with solid margins and, platform those together, maybe even some synergetic. I am looking at some synergetic concepts now where we could maybe, do two locations in the same mall potentially. So just helps us create more economies of scale. But the number one priority is raising capital. So if you have some money you'd like to invest, I'd be happy to walk
Listen,
you through a deck.
listen. Do not tell my husband that because we always joke like no more kids, no more brands, and 1 year later we always have another kid and another brand. And I always joke
Yeah,
he was at the IFA 1 year and like late night at like a scorpion party where they have a free tequila bar, someone comes over and goes, "You need to go get your husband." And so of course you're thinking, who's hitting on him? Is his shirt off? Like I'm about to fight. And then I
yeah,
realized this asshole's about to sign an FDD. Someone had talked him into needing more. And I was like, buddy, I was like, first of all, you're signing an FDD 18 tequilas in. Second of all, we already own a pest control business. Why are you buying another one? And his was all of a sudden now I have the ops team or the dev team and him going, well, if we own both mosquito companies in the area, we can have, the majority or the
yeah.
monopoly. I was
A
like,
little
that's not
monopoly. Yeah.
how it works. First of all, get in the Uber.
That's funny.
So I'm sure he's going to listen to this and be like, listen, if they have the best in the world, and next thing you know, we're going to be business partners. So for those also in your shoes, do you have any tips for raising capital? Because clearly you've gotten somewhere. I know you want more, but do you have any tips for people who might just be starting out thinking, I can't get to where I need to be without it?
I do. It depends on where you're at. So when I went through this process, I was just like, and continue to go through the process. I'm like, this is insane, to a certain extent. VC, family office, private equity, all over the place. And you go through and you do the intro call and you start this process over every single time. So I started digging around a little bit. And there's a company called Clued, CLEWED.com. It's a fintech platform that kind of consolidates all this stuff.
Mhm.
And the founder, Hiwat, who I've become pretty good friends with over the last several months, she built this platform, and essentially it takes three components. There's an advisory component, there's obviously the brand that needs to raise capital, and then there's investors. And the platform essentially takes um, the brand through, or the brand that's raising not quite an SEC kind of rigor, but
Mhm.
really takes it to a strong first sweep of just information, and kind of the goal is to kind of you know like just make it easier to access these companies that aren't public yet, that investors have interest in, but they can also get the right information on as if it were a public company. So we're trying to roll this into the franchise space a little bit. I know we're looking at a few brands that we're trying to get on the platform now, to
Mhm.
see if it's a viable option, and it's still a little bit of a work in progress, honestly. But I think it's going to be a better solution than going, one by one by one. Once you're on the platform, then you're in front of all these different folks, anyways.
Mhm.
And the cool thing is, if you need to go on to raise round two or whatever, there continues to be kind of updated information on your progress, where you're headed, and then you can re-raise, with the same investors on the platform or potentially other investors on the platform as well. So that's an area that I'm become kind of passionate about too, just with all the hours and time and
Sure.
meetings and networking and
Yeah.
pitches and all that stuff. So that's a thing we're looking at to see if it will work in the franchise space, but I feel pretty confident it will.
Well, that's great. And on behalf of franchising, I appreciate you doing that. I always, I come up with these like crazy ideas sometimes because I'm just like entrepreneur, but can only do the marketing. So when it comes to ops, it's just like a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then my husband be like, great, go raise some money. I'm like, no, can you come with me? And he's like, no, go do it. I'm like, first of all, I don't know how to do it. Second of all, I can open for days, but when it comes to closing, they'll be like, okay, how much do you need? I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's free. $1. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I think that will help streamline the process for a lot of people.
For sure.
Well, we're coming up on time, but I do want to ask you, our final questions, which I ask everyone off the cuff. If you had one piece of advice to give to a franchisee, what would that be? And if you had a piece of advice to give to a franchisor, what would that be?
Franchisee, follow your KPIs, and don't try and recreate the wheel. That's pretty simple. If you're with a good brand and you do those two things, you'll probably be pretty successful. As a franchisor, you've heard this before, but you just got to be real careful about who you bring into the system. The wrong people, the negative people, the people that aren't equipped to run a business can really take you backwards pretty quickly. Negativity is pervasive. People always, everything's always somebody else's fault, as you know. So, as a franchisor, I think like if you have a good brand and you're managing a good system, you've got good technology and marketing and all these other things, like the thing that will keep you in the same place is the wrong franchisees in the system. So I think that's probably the two big things on both sides of the fence there.
I love it. And, a lot of times when we ask these questions, the answers are the same, but they always have their own unique spin to it. And I think the best part was, those franchisees will keep you in a place of, not growth or not where you want to be. And that's, couldn't be more true. And especially with recreating the wheel. Sometimes I work with franchisees and I'm like, why did you turn the logo a different color? Like, that's like rule one. And they're like, well, it's pretty. Yeah. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Well, thank you, Ben, for coming on The Art of Franchise Marketing. If you guys want to connect with him, connect with the brand, go on LinkedIn, buy all your macarons. You heard it here first. So I'm sure we'll see you at a lot of the conferences. And of course, we'll be keeping an eye on the brand and all the tech you're doing. Hopefully Stephanie doesn't come from my job, but when she does,
she might be.
Know why it's Ben's fault.
She's getting smarter, I'll tell you.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Franchise Marketing. This show is brought to you by NetCertive. We help franchise brands and multi-location businesses run localized digital marketing at scale. To learn more, visit netcertive.com.